Hello, kiddos. Today on EPA 608, we're going to talk about um, active recovery. Okay, active recovery is when you use a machine, an external component to recover the refrigerant from an air conditioning system, a split system, or a window unit, or a refrigerator, whatever it may be. We're not depending on the system itself to recover it. We're using actually a machine. It has a low and a high side gauges. It has yellow gauges. You'll also see a recovery can. That's a recovery can. That's where we put the refrigerant as we pull it out of the air conditioning system, whatever type of system it may be. It does not need the units, compressor, or anything. Matter of fact, inside of a active recovery machine, there's a compressor in it in itself. Matter of fact, the refrigerant that you pull out of the system actually uses the refrigerant to also help cool off the compressor inside of the device. Um, I use that more than I do any other type of system. I try sometimes to use passive recovery, which means using the system itself instead of a machine. Um, the main reason is a lot of times is when you're working on a system, the compressor's out, or something causes the compressor not to work. So a lot of times you have to use something to help you take it out. But in type 1, you're not required to use this type of system. You can actually use the system itself, or just depend on the pressures of the refrigerant itself to come out of the system itself. All right? But if you want to make sure you get all the refrigerant out, you can use an active process. But when you're working with type 1, you can use passive, which if the compressor is working, you must be able to recover 90% of the refrigerant at a 4 inches of mercury or vacuum. All right, 4 inches of vacuum. But if the compressor's inoperative, and if you're using a passive, which is using the system internal compressor to remove the refrigerant, then if the compressor's inoperative, you're only required to recover 80% of the refrigerant at a 4 inches of a vacuum. All right? But if you're using a recovery machine, most likely you'll be able to pull most of it, all of it out. All right? But again, this is active recovery, which uses an external machine, not depending on the air conditioning system itself. So this is doing all the work without using any of the internal air conditioning system. This is an active external recovery machine. Internal passive recovery passive recovery is using the own air conditioning system itself without using a machine. And depending on if the compressor works or not, determines how much you're required to recover. If the compressor's working, you got to recover 90% of it at 4 inches of mercury. And if it's not working, you're required to recover 80% of the refrigerant at 4 inches of vacuum, 4 inches of vacuum on both of them. You also can use a passive recovery device container, which is like a plastic bag that's designed to put refrigerant in it to help speed up or get as much refrigerant out of the system as you can. You can use a rubber mallet to kind of bang on the compressor a little bit without damaging the compressor, to try to shake up the oil and refrigerant to get the refrigerant out of the oils. And you can also use an external heat source or the internal heat source. Sometimes compressors have a heating element around it. You can also turn that on to help heat up the oils and the refrigerant to increase the pressure. Remember, when you increase the heat, you increase the pressure. That helps you remove the refrigerant faster, and also helps you remove most of the refrigerant out of the system without the compressor working. But you can do it with both the compressor working and not working to help you get as much of the refrigerant. We're trying to recover as much as possible. All right. So, active recovery system with a recovery can. Remember, the bottom is gray, the top is yellow. You'll see that on question. This is active. This is using an external way of removing the refrigerant from the system. And passive is not using a machine. It's using its own internal components. It's an internal compressor to remove the system. Hope you understand. If you have any questions, you know how to contact me. All right, bingo.